Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nemeka Onyeka Obereri. Today, I'm here to discuss on how we can actually cover the 17 million housing deficit in Nigeria. Of course, there have been different debates and arguments on the actual number of housing units that we have in Nigeria and the number of housing deficits that we have in reality. And the truth is, we have huge housing deficits in Nigeria. Today, based on the economic status of most Nigerians, 99% of Nigerians cannot own their own houses on legitimate income. And that is the truth. For you to build a decent three-bedroom flat, you must at least have at least 30 million naira in your pocket. I'm not talking about furnishing. 99% of Nigerians cannot own their own properties. And the truth is, we don't even have any mortgage structure in place for financing like we have in the West, where people can take 30-year-old money, 25-year-old money as lower single digit to enable them finance mortgages. Most Nigerian banks and financial institutions are not designed to fund housing. So how do we breach the 17 million housing units? It's estimated that we have over 17 million housing deficit that will take about 425 trillion naira. 425 trillion naira is $265 billion over the next 20 years to cover. Even if we sell crude oil and use the crude oil revenue to fund housing units, in 10, 20 years, we will not cover the housing deficit, every other thing remaining constant. So to build 17 million housing units, basic housing, I'm not talking about edifices, and will require 425 trillion naira, $665 billion. And people like Jokonde, Simon Bakwe did a lot to develop housing. I go to Owerri and I see the way people are scrambling for the little piece of land at the new Owerri Capital Territory. As a primary school kid in 1983, I was in primary school then. My father was one of them. Before my father lost his job then, I think he lost his job then at ADC because he was an activist unionist who was against corrupt leaders in their agency. Then my father was an accountant with Agricultural Development Corporation. They insisted that the management must be sacked because they were stealing their money. And so those people were relieved. And then when it was time for them to compile people that would be sacked, he was included and he was sacked. So my father was doing Kimbom job in those areas. So I normally used to go with him, during weekends to go and see the place. Mbakwe developed the new Owerri Capital Territory. If the military had not removed Mbakwe in 1983, New Owerri Capital Territory would have been the best housing estate location ever built in Nigeria. Because what we have now is a caricature of what Mbakwe had in mind. We had fiber optics were being laid then and everything. Jokonde, if you drive around Lagos, you'll see massive buildings estates that Jokonde did. Even Shagari, within 4 years, there is no local government area that you will not see Shagari low-cost housing units. So how do we breach this deficit that will require 425 trillion naira, $265 billion? You see, by the reason of the Land Use Act, most of the land in Nigeria are under the control of the governors. But not the unfortunate thing. The whole essence of the Land Use Act is to make it easy for government to procure land for public use without recourse to the host communities. But most of the governors today are abusing it. When land is taken, it's supposed to be for hospitals, for schools, for things that for overriding public goods, maybe doing roads and rail. But in Nigeria, most governors are stealing lands from host communities and handing over to their private sector cronies to do estates, which is not the whole intention and the letters and spirit of those who framed the Land Use Act and enshrined it in our constitution. Now, they don't care about housing. They don't care about the people. They will have put a structure in place, structures that can allow these things to thrive. I'll give you an example. I come from Imo State. And if you go from Aladema Housing Estate to Ikenebu layout, go and check. Most of those things were things that were done by Michael Obara, Desamon Bakwe, and the rest of them. There's nothing new that has happened in the old Eastern region since 1999 till now in terms of massive housing, urban housing or rural housing development. Sometime in 2020, 2021, I came up with an arrangement with a group of diasporas. By the special grace of God, in 2007, 2008, I was privileged to be head of corporate finance in one of deposit money banks. And I had special liaison and the relationship with Nigerians and diaspora. There was even a group of 800 medical doctors, very wealthy doctors. We had a plan on how we can set up under PPP framework some of the three world-class diagnostic centers in Imo State. Now we're going to develop 2,000 housing units in Owerri, and then some in Okiwe, some in Oluson, in the three zones. We wanted to start from Owerri zone. And then, government was not supposed to bring in money. We had a structured how we are going to raise $300 million to do the project, and how we provide mortgages at 25-year mortgages, and how we are going to leverage on diaspora bonds and equity financing to do the project. All that government needed to do was just to provide the CFO for the SPV. Government is not bringing a cover, but government will own 30% of the project from midwife in it. The host community that owned the land, because the structure we had was you can't take community land to do private estates without compensating them. Of course, one of the host communities then naked, where they took their properties and they went to court. They won the first level court judgment. The state government, of course, we have lived in a lawless country, ignored the judgment. We're able to convince the community, value their land, we're going to pay them 2.9 billion. And of course, they know what that kind of development will entail in their community. And they were ready and willing to accept that 2.9 billion as settlement. We brought in one of the biggest developers in Nigeria, the Israeli group, the HFP, to be technical partners. Everything was ready. The funding was ready just for us to kickstart. The government messed it up out of greed, because everybody was after, from the topmost, what they're going to get, what comes to them and everything. And the same problem here in Nigeria. Most of the governors don't think like Jokonde. Most of them don't think like this. Most of them will never think like Michael Obara. Michael was premier of Old Eastern Region for 7 years. Michael never stole anything. In fact, the old house that Michael had in Umuahia, it was Abia State government. I don't even know whether it's still watching, that even helped to refurbish it. Michael never stole a pin. Desa Mbakwe never stole a pin. But their name still rings bell in eternity. But most of these people we have today, they don't care. How do we cover? See, that is why today in Nigeria you have agents and landlords, those who are privileged to build one or two rickety houses with agents that destroy Nigerians. Rent. Most Nigerians actually, salaries cannot even pay rent. Most Nigerians have to depend on their brothers in diaspora to send them money to pay house rent in Nigeria. It's not supposed to be so. We can have a structure where low-cost housing units can be built for those who can afford it under a rent-to-own arrangement that makes it. And the structure we had was what? An awesome structure. An awesome structure that can help us to massively develop housing in Nigeria across every state, across every local government area. And we had it all figured out, how the fundings are going to come in place outside the domestic money banks in Nigeria that are not structured to fund housing. Nobody. Buhari and his gangsters in 2017 came up with the Economic Recovery Group plan. I think Fashola was the Minister for Works and Housing and whatever, and they came up with a beautiful blueprint on how they're going to set up a housing trust fund of 1 trillion naira, and how they were going to midwife 2 million housing units between 2017 to 2020. From 2017 to 2020, when Buhari left office, I don't know anywhere in Nigeria where they midwifed 10,000 housing units out of their projected 2 million, and everybody forgot about it. Can we do 2 million housing units in Nigeria in 7-10 years? Yes, we can. We have the structures. We have the structures, the design on how it can be done. Built. I sit down and I see a country with deep potentials, but being ravaged by marauding bandits masquerading as political leaders. No government has any right to take community land and give to a private sector developer to build any. And when they take those houses, they now build elitist houses for themselves, where they build duplexes and everything. You will never see them doing 1-bedroom flat, 2-bedroom flat, mass housing for the masses. And unfortunately, the masses will also be charring them up. The masses will char them up. I was on the ballot in 2019 with Tony Nwolo under the UPP to become the deputy governor of Imo State. We had a plan, massive plan, 4-year plan of that will attract over $1.2 billion investment in Imo State. $300 million every year. We had a plan on how we would do 5-kilometer rural road across all the 305 wards, each of the 5 kilometer in each of the 305 electoral wards in Imo State, using the Israeli agri-buying technology. Obin Nambao became my very good friend. He was even the one who introduced me to that technology. Very cheap technology that can help us do rural road network, link up the whole part of Imo State under a very, very cost-effective manner that does not allow anybody looting money. We are not reinventing the wheel. Go to South Africa, the Limpopo province, that is how they developed rural road in those areas. Tony was supposed to face politics. I was supposed to be the technical man in the team running the economy, and very easygoing guy. We had it all planned out, how we're going to develop 305 primary health care centers and tertiary health institutions. How we are going to do 3 world-class diagnostic centers in Imo State, working with Ndimo medical doctors in diaspora, linked to the office of the technical office of our technical partners, ESME Tel Aviv. We had everything mapped out. How we are going to create hundreds of billions of 1.3 trillion naira agro wealth in Imo State. How we are going to create average of 600,000 to 1 million jobs by the time we are done with governing Imo State for 4 to 8 years. We had everything planned out. How we are going to secure Imo State using the agro rangers, setting up a health security trust fund of 35 billion. How we are going to secure Imo State, put scanners across every entry point to Imo State, put drone cover in Imo State. They have not burned the bandits down. In fact, as there wouldn't have been any inch of Imo State ground for any bandit, whether Fulani herdsmen or even the local bandits, to occupy. How will have carried everybody along? Imo State will have been free education, and how will have going to stop education trust fund, both at the community level, at the local government level, at the state level. Energize the communal spirit of Ndimo, just like Mbakwe did. Imo State is the only place where their airport was built through communal effort. It was that same Mbakwe, there was some Michael Okpara spirit that we wanted to bring into governance in Imo State. We wanted to make Ndimo set example for the whole world to see. We showed them templates on how we can develop, turn over into a real Las Vegas with 24/7 economic activities. How we're going to work with the landlords in New York, Capital Territory, and all other places, World Bank and everything, to develop the infrastructure in that place, to do central water system. We have a group in Oman. I represent a group called Nasiba. Practically, I used to travel 2-3 times to Dubai. What I do for them is to help them to scout for good projects in Sub-Saharan Africa, which they can fund. I help them to do the desktop due diligence for them, and then select those where they can put the money. I have the group who developed the waterways in the Middle East that were willing to come in. We will do central water systems in all the senatorial zones, where we have pipe-borne waters in every home. Central seaway system, where we will turn waste to water, to waste to wealth. And turn waste to power. We had it all planned out. But of course, Ndimo chose to collect money from their people, those that will give them money. They're asking them, has I an election? Hajiego. I don't have looted fund to give anybody, but I have the brain that God gave to me. I have the mind of Joseph, the mind of Daniel, the creative mind that those who understand what wisdom is will give anything to have. We'll keep on sharing this state. I will come back again and show us how we can develop road networks in Imo State. I'll be doing it sector by sector. I will come back and discuss health. I will come back. We even talked about how we're going to set up tech incubation centers in every local government area in Imo State. Tech incubation centers linked to FUTO, linked to IMSU, linked to one of the tech hubs in India, so that Imo State will be a place where you have some of the tech creators, will be a home for creators and tech gurus. Imo State will be a place where we'll be competing with the Philippines as a business outsourcing center. God have mercy on us. We will keep on sharing ideas, providing solutions, telling us what we can do. Look at Nigeria. Look at our state. Look at the place God so blessed. We had many gas wells capped in Uguta. We had plans of setting up under PPP. And we had a group that we brought from Philadelphia that was going to do 100,000 an urea plant, fertilizer plant that produces about 100,000 tons of fertilizer every year. We had gas collection centers that were supposed to produce CNGs to set up gas processing centers in Imo State. We had it all planned out. But Ndimo chose to go within the 419 and do it in Ndiama. And see where we are. Today, Okigo and Oluzon have become centers. They've had headquarters of bandits and domestic terrorists, masquerading as agitators, because there is no hope for them. They don't have confidence and trust in those that purport to lead them. May God have mercy on us. But we will fix our land. We are not going anywhere. We will fix Nigeria. We will fix this land. We'll keep on talking. We'll keep on doing our own little means, whatever we can to ensure that we put consciousness. Let this thing. I'm going to also talk about electoral reform, things that we need to do to allow people like this, people like Michael Agura, people like Nemeka to get to the place of power and authority to help give life. God bless you. Thank you.